The pen stopped an inch from the paper. Elara Thorne, 28 years old and exhausted from 3 days of travel, stared at the signature line on the estate transfer document. Her hand wouldn't move. Something was wrong with this room, with the tall windows that showed only darkness, with the shelves of leather-bound books that seemed to absorb sound, with the man watching her from across the mahogany desk. "You're hesitating," Lord Cassian Valdren said. His voice was silk over stone. "I'm reading." Elara forced her steel-gray eyes back to the text. The words blurred. She'd read the same paragraph 4 times. "Your mother signed those same papers in 1847. He spoke as casually as if mentioning yesterday's weather. She sat in that exact chair, wore a green traveling dress with jet buttons. The pen slipped from Elara's fingers. "That's impossible." Her voice came out steady despite the ice spreading through her chest. "My mother died 6 months ago. She was 73 years old." Cassian leaned back in his chair. The lamplight caught his pale gold eyes, eyes that held something ancient and patient. His black hair fell straight to his shoulders, framing aristocratic features that belonged in a portrait gallery. "I don't mean your mother, Miss Thorne. I mean your great-great-great-grandmother, also named Elara." He tilted his head. "The resemblance is remarkable. Same jawline, same stubborn set to your mouth when you're deciding whether to run." Elara's hand moved to the thin scar along her left jaw. She caught herself and lowered it. "This is a bad joke." "I never joke about family histories." Cassian stood and moved to the window with inhuman grace. "Your ancestor came here seeking answers about her brother's death. Thomas Thorne. He'd been found in the woods with no blood in his body and a smile on his face." The room tilted. Thomas. Her brother's name had been Thomas. He'd died 3 years ago in circumstances the police called suspicious but couldn't explain. The autopsy had shown massive blood loss with no wounds. "How do you know that name?" "I know many names." Cassian turned to face her. "I've lived long enough to watch families bloom and wither like flowers. The Thorns always come back, always searching, always leaving before they find what they need." Elara stood. Her chair scraped against the wooden floor. "I'm leaving now." "Of course you are." Something like sadness crossed his marble-cold features. "You're the 7th Thorn woman to sit in that chair. Every one of you signed those papers and walked away. Every one of you returned within 30 days. I won't. Your mother's estate passes to the Valdren Foundation if you don't return by the new moon." He gestured to the documents. "Those papers transfer the property cleanly. No complications. No questions. You can live freely." "That's what I want." "Ymit?" Cassian moved closer, not threatening, just present in a way that made the air feel thinner. "Your mother spent her final week writing you letters. 17 of them. She burned 16. The last one she gave to my housekeeper with instructions to deliver it only if you came here and tried to leave without asking questions." "What questions?" The words escaped before Elara could stop them. "Why your brother smiled when he died." Cassian's pale gold eyes held hers. "Why your mother visited this estate every year on the same date. Why she warned you in her will to never come here, knowing that warning would guarantee you'd come." Elara's throat tightened. Her mother's final letter had said exactly that. "Stay away from Valdren Estate. Promise me. Whatever happens, don't go there." "What was in the letter she burned?" "I don't read other people's mail, Miss Thorne. I'm not a monster." Cassian returned to his desk. "But I can offer you what I offered her, what I've offered every Thorn who came seeking truth, immortality. Time enough to understand the patterns, to see what mortals can't see because they die before the picture completes." "You're insane." "I'm 847 years old." He said it like mentioning his height. "I cannot die. Everyone I've ever loved has withered while I remained. It's not a gift. It's a curse, but it does provide perspective." Elara grabbed the documents. Her hands shook, but she kept her voice level. "I'm signing these papers. I'm leaving. I'm never coming back." "Then you'll die like your brother did." Cassian's words stopped her at the door. Smiling, confused, wondering why you feel so cold, she turned. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." His ancient eyes held something that might have been genuine concern. "The curse doesn't care if you believe in it. It takes what it wants. The only question is whether you'll understand why before it's too late. Elara signed the papers on the hall table. Her signature looked nothing like her careful handwriting, all jagged edges and desperate speed. She was halfway to her car when she realized she'd left her mother's locket on Cassian's desk, the one Thomas had given her the week before he died. The one she never ever took off. The hotel room smelled of dust and old soap. Elara dropped her bag on the narrow bed and moved to the window. The village below looked tired in the gray afternoon light. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin lines. She pulled the signed documents from her coat pocket. The paper felt heavy, expensive. Her hands wanted to shake, but she wouldn't let them. 6 women before her, 6 generations, all sitting in that same chair, all returning within 30 days. Elara set the papers on the small wooden table. She sat down hard in the chair beside it. The wood creaked under her weight. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket and saw a familiar name on the screen. Elara? The voice sounded thin, worried. I'm here. Elara pressed the phone closer to her ear. How are you feeling? The hospital called again, about the bills. A pause. I told them you were handling it. Elara closed her eyes. The medical debt sat like a stone in her chest. Chemotherapy didn't come cheap. Neither did the surgery that followed. I am handling it, she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Did you sign the papers? For the estate? The unsigned documents stared at her from the table. Elara looked away. Not yet. There are complications. What kind of complications? Her daughter's voice sharpened. Mom, this could solve everything. The debt, my treatment costs, your retirement. I know what it could solve. Elara stood and walked back to the window. The Valdren estate rose in the distance, dark against the darkening sky. But something isn't right about this. You always say that, about everything. Her daughter's frustration came through clearly. Sometimes things are just what they seem, an inheritance, a gift. Why do you always have to fight it? Because every gift comes with strings, Elara thought. Because men like Cassian Valdren don't give away fortunes without reason. Because 6 women before me thought they could walk away, and they all came back. I need 30 days, Elara said, to think about it. 30 days? Her daughter's voice rose. The hospital won't wait that long. They're already threatening collections. Elara's jaw tightened. She could feel the trap closing around her, the debt on one side, the estate on the other, and in the middle, Cassian Valdren with his pale gold eyes and his impossible age. I'll figure something out, she said. I always do. By refusing help? By pushing everyone away? Her daughter's voice cracked. Dad left because you wouldn't let him in. Thomas died alone because you were too proud to visit. And now you're going to throw away our one chance at... Don't! The word came out sharp, cold. Don't bring your brother into this. Silence stretched between them. Elara could hear her daughter breathing on the other end of the line. I have to go, her daughter said finally. The nurse is here. The call ended. Elara stared at the dark screen in her hand. She turned back to the documents. In the fading light, she could barely read the words. But she knew what they said. Sign here. Transfer the estate. Walk away with enough money to save her daughter. All she had to do was trust a man who claimed to be 800 years old. All she had to do was ignore the pattern. 6 women, 6 returns. Elara sat down at the table again. She pulled a pen from her bag. Her hand hovered over the signature line. Thomas's face flashed in her mind, pale, bloodless. The coroner's confused expression when he said there were no wounds. She set the pen down. 30 days. That's what Cassian had said. The new moon. She had 30 days to find out what really happened to Thomas. 30 days to break the pattern that had held her family for 6 generations. 30 days before she decided whether to sign her name on a document that felt more like a contract with the devil than a simple estate transfer. Elara stood. She grabbed her coat from the bed. If she was going to break this cycle, she needed answers, real ones. And she knew exactly where to start looking. The cottage smelled of dust and lavender sachets gone stale. Elara pushed open the door and stepped into the morning light that slanted through unwashed windows. Her mother had been dead for 6 months. The estate lawyer had kept the keys until now. She moved through the small rooms with careful steps. Everything remained exactly as her mother had left it. A teacup on the kitchen counter, reading glasses folded on the arm of a chair. The stillness pressed against Elara's chest like a weight. She had come here for answers. Cassian Valdren had mentioned 6 generations of Thorne women. Her mother would have been one of them. The thought made Elara's hands cold. The bedroom was at the back of the cottage. Elara opened the door and found a space frozen in time. The bed was made with military precision. A small desk sat beneath the window, and on the nightstand, a photograph in a silver frame. Elara picked it up. Her mother stood beside a tall man in dark clothing. The photo was old, the colors faded to sepia tones, but the man's face was unmistakable. Cassian Valdren, looking exactly as he had 2 days ago. The frame slipped from Elara's fingers. It hit the floor with a crack. Glass scattered across the hardwood. She knelt and turned the photograph over. On the back, written in her mother's careful script, August 1962, the last summer. Elara's breath came shallow and quick. She pulled open the nightstand drawer. Inside lay a stack of leather-bound journals, their spines cracked with age. She carried them to the desk and opened the first one. March 15, 1960. I met him today at the estate. He asked about Thomas, my grandfather, not my son. I told him grandfather died when I was 12. He looked at me with such sadness, as if he had known. The entries continued, page after page of her mother's neat handwriting, meetings at the estate, conversations about family history, and slowly, carefully, something else emerging between the lines. June 3rd, 1961. He told me what he is today. I should have run. I should have taken Elara and disappeared. But I looked into his eyes and saw 8 centuries of loneliness. How do you turn away from that? Elara's hands shook. She flipped forward through the pages. December 12th, 1961. He says he loves me. He says every generation he hopes this time will be different. That this time the curse will break. But it never does. The Thorne men always die. Always bloodless. Always 3 years after the women sign. The words blurred. Elara blinked hard and kept reading. August 30th, 1962. I made my choice today. I told him I would sign the papers. He begged me not to. Can you imagine? An immortal creature begging a mortal woman to walk away. But Thomas is sick. My boy needs medicine we cannot afford. The inheritance will save him. Elara turned the page. The next entry was dated 3 years later. September 1st, 1965. Thomas died last night, bloodless like all the others. Cassian came to the funeral. He stood at the mound, hidden in shadows. Afterward, he left a letter. It said, I am sorry. I have always been sorry. The curse does not care about love. The journal fell from Elara's hands. She pressed her palms against the desk and tried to breathe. Her mother had known, had loved Cassian Valdren, had signed the papers to save her son, Elara's brother, and lost him anyway. The pattern was clear now, devastating and clear. Sign the papers, get the money, watch the men die 3 years later. But why? What kind of curse demanded such a price? Elara stood and moved to the window. The Valdren estate was visible in the distance, its dark towers rising against the morning sky. Cassian was there, waiting, knowing she would piece it together eventually. She thought of her daughter's voice on the phone, desperate, frightened, the medical bills mounting like a wall between them. She thought of Thomas, her brother, not her grandfather, dead 3 years now, bloodless, alone. Had her mother signed the papers before Thomas was born? Had the curse already been set in motion? Elara turned back to the journals. She needed to know everything, every detail, every choice her mother had made, because she was standing at the same crossroads now. Money that could save her daughter, a curse that killed the men she loved, and Cassian Valdren, 800 years old, still hoping this time would be different. The morning light shifted. Shadows moved across the cottage floor. Elara sat down and opened the next journal. She would read them all, every word, and then she would go back to the estate. This time she would demand the whole truth. Elara drove back to the Valdren estate with her mother's journals on the passenger seat. The leather covers felt like evidence, like proof of a crime she still didn't fully understand. The gates opened before she could announce herself. Someone had been watching for her. She parked in the circular drive and walked around the side of the manor. Gravel crunched under her boots. The moonlit gardens stretched behind the house, all shadows and silver light. She knew he would be there. Men like Cassian Valdren didn't hide. He stood near a fountain that no longer ran. His dark coat hung open over a simple shirt. No cravat tonight, no pretense of playing the gentleman from another century. You loved my mother, Elara said. No greeting, no preamble. Cassian turned. His pale gold eyes caught the moonlight. Yes. You warned her not to sign. Yes. She signed anyway. Thomas died 3 years later. Bloodless, just like you said he would. Cassian's jaw tightened. I tried to stop her. She wouldn't listen. Elara pulled one of the journals from her bag. She opened it to a marked page. August 14th, 1962. You told her you'd loved hundreds of women, thousands, that you'd watch them all grow old while you stayed the same. That's true. You told her you were tired of watching people die. Also true. Elara snapped the journal shut. Then why do you keep doing this? Why offer the inheritance? Why set up this sick pattern where women sign papers and their sons die? Cassian moved closer. His steps made no sound on the stone path. I don't control the curse. I'm trapped in it. The estate must pass to a Thorne woman every generation. The papers must be offered. What happens after is not my choice. But you know what happens. You've seen it 6 times. 7, Cassian said quietly, counting your mother. The number hit Elara like a physical blow. 7 women, 7 dead sons or brothers, a pattern stretching back nearly 2 centuries. Why didn't you stop it? Her voice cracked. Why didn't you refuse to offer the papers? I tried once. Cassian looked away. In 1923, I burned the documents, refused to summon the woman. Her brother died anyway. Bloodless. On the exact day the 3 years would have ended. The curse doesn't need the papers. It only needs the bloodline. Elara's hands shook. She gripped the journal tighter. So we're all just doomed? Every Thorne man dies and there's nothing anyone can do? The women who signed got the inheritance. They used the money. Some saved other family members. Your mother paid for treatments that gave Thomas 3 good years instead of 6 painful months. 3 years before he died anyway. Yes. Cassian's voice was flat, empty. 3 years before he died anyway. Elara wanted to scream, to throw the journal at his perfect, unchanging face. Instead, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since she found the journals. Did you love any of the others, the other Thorne women? Cassian was silent for a long moment. The fountain dripped somewhere in the darkness. 2, he finally said, your mother and one other. In 1887, her name was Margaret. What happened to Margaret? She signed, her son died. She came back 30 years later to curse me to my face before she died of pneumonia. Cassian's expression didn't change. She was right to curse me. I deserved it. Elara stared at him, at this man who looked 30 but carried 8 centuries in his eyes. You're a monster. Yes. You've let this happen 7 times. Yes. You'll let it happen again. Cassian met her gaze. You're the first one who did not sign immediately, the first one who's fighting. Every other woman signed within a week. Came back within 30 days when they needed more answers. You're different. I'm not different. I just don't want to play your game. That's what makes you different. Something flickered in Cassian's pale gold eyes, something that might have been hope. Every other woman wanted something from me. Answers, money, revenge. You just want to walk away. So let me walk away. I can't. The curse won't allow it. In 26 days, the new moon comes. If you haven't signed by then, the pattern breaks. And I don't know what happens when the pattern breaks. Elara's breath caught. You mean it might stop? The curse might end? Or it might get worse? Cassian stepped closer, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the only sign of the weight he carried. Every curse has rules. Break the rules and the curse either shatters or evolves. I've never seen anyone refuse to sign past the 30-day mark. Then I'll be the first. Your daughter needs the money. The words were soft, gentle. cruel in their accuracy. Elara's hand tightened on the journal until her knuckles went white. Stay away from my daughter. I don't need to go near her. You'll go back to her. You'll see her medical bills. You'll remember that the inheritance could save her life. Cassian's voice carried 8 centuries of sorrow. And you'll sign, just like your mother did, just like they all did. Elara turned and walked away. Her legs felt unsteady, her chest tight. Behind her, Cassian's voice drifted through the moonlit garden. 26 days, Elara. Then we'll see if you're really different. The village archive smelled of dust and old paper. Elara stood before a wall of ledgers, her fingers trailing along cracked leather spines. Each volume represented decades of property records. Somewhere in these pages lay the truth about what Cassian's foundation actually did with the estates it collected. The archivist, a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles, pulled down 3 heavy books. He set them on the reading table with careful reverence. The Valdren Foundation transactions go back to 1891, he said. Quite unusual, really. Most charitable trusts dissolve within a generation. Elara opened the first ledger. Her hands shook slightly as she turned the brittle pages. The entries were meticulously recorded. Each Thorne woman's name appeared in elegant script. Her great-great-grandmother, Adelaide, in 1891. Her great-grandmother, Catherine, in 1923. The pattern continued through the decades like tombstones marking graves. But something caught her attention. Small notations appeared beside each transfer. Estate maintained in trust, descendants retain residency rights. What does this mean? She pointed to the notation beside her grandmother's entry from 1962. The archivist leaned closer, squinting at the faded ink. Ah, yes. The foundation never sells the properties. They preserve them. Any descendants can petition to reclaim the estate after a certain period. Elara's chest tightened. Reclaim them? Indeed. The foundation acts as a caretaker, not an owner. Quite generous, actually. They maintain the properties at considerable expense, while the families receive the monetary value immediately. The words didn't make sense. Cassian had said the curse demanded the estates, but if the foundation preserved them, if descendants could return... Has anyone ever petitioned? She asked. The archivist shook his head. Not that I'm aware, though the option remains open. Elara copied the relevant passages into her notebook. Her handwriting looked jagged and desperate across the clean pages. The solicitor's office occupied a narrow building on the village's main street. Elara climbed the steep stairs to the second floor, her boots echoing on worn wood. Mr. Davies had handled Thorne family matters for 40 years. He greeted her with cautious warmth, his gray beard neatly trimmed, his desk organized with military precision. Miss Thorne, I wondered when you might visit. I want to know about the Valdren Foundation's other activities. Elara sat without waiting for an invitation. Beyond property management. Mr. Davies folded his hands atop a stack of folders. They fund medical research, have done for over a century. Quite substantial grants, actually. What kind of research? Blood disorders, primarily. Rare diseases, conditions that cause unexplained deaths. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer. They've funded 17 major research institutions. Several breakthrough treatments originated from their grants. Elara's throat went dry. Bloodless deaths? Among other things, yes. Mr. Davies opened the folder, revealing pages of financial records. The Foundation has poured millions into understanding these conditions. Lord Valdren himself reviews each grant application personally. The room felt too small suddenly. Elara gripped the edge of the desk. Why? The word came out hoarse. Mr. Davies studied her with kind, tired eyes. I've often wondered that myself. Lord Valdren seems driven by some personal tragedy, perhaps. A loss he's trying to prevent others from experiencing. Elara thought of Cassian's pale gold eyes in the moonlit garden, the sorrow etched into his marble features. The way he'd confessed to loving her mother while knowing she would die. May I see the grant recipients, she asked. Mr. Davies turned the folder toward her. Of course. She scanned the list. University hospitals, research laboratories, independent scientists studying genetic blood disorders. Each entry included notes about the research focus. One name made her breath catch. Dr. Helena Marsh, Thomas's doctor. the physician who'd examined his body and found no medical explanation for his death. This doctor, Elara said, tapping the entry, she treated my brother. Ah, Mr. Davies nodded slowly. Yes, Dr. Marsh has received foundation funding for 12 years. Her work on unexplained exsanguination has been quite groundbreaking, though no definitive cure yet. No cure. The words hung heavy in the air. Elara closed the folder carefully. Her hands had stopped shaking. Something cold and clear settled in her chest. Cassian wasn't stealing estates, he was preserving them, protecting legacies while searching desperately for a way to break a curse he couldn't control. Thank you, she said quietly. Mr. Davies regarded her with concern. Miss Thorne, whatever decision you make about the estate, Lord Valdren is not the villain some believe him to be. Elara stood. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her. She'd come seeking evidence of corruption. Instead, she'd found a man who'd spent centuries trying to save the people he was cursed to destroy. The afternoon sun slanted through the office windows. Outside, the village continued its ordinary rhythm. But Elara's understanding had shifted fundamentally. Cassian had loved her mother, and he'd spent decades funding the research that might have saved Thomas. She needed to return to the manor, to ask the questions she'd left unfinished in the garden. But this time, she would listen to his answer. Elara climbed the steps to Cassian's estate as the sun touched the horizon. 29 days had passed since she'd first sat in his study. One day remained before the new moon deadline. She carried no documents this time, only certainty. Mirren opened the door before Elara could knock. The elderly housekeeper's face showed no surprise. He's in his study, miss. Mirren stepped aside. He's been waiting. The hallways felt different now. Elara knew their secrets. She knew about the preserved estates, the medical research, the clause allowing descendants to reclaim their properties. She knew Cassian had loved her mother. She knew he'd warned every woman, and they'd all signed anyway. She knew the pattern, but not its purpose. Cassian stood by the window when she entered. He wore a dark coat that might have been fashionable 2 centuries ago. His pale gold eyes reflected the dying light. You came back. His voice held no triumph, only tired recognition. They all came back, Elara said. You knew I would. Knowing doesn't make it easier. He turned from the window. The papers are on the desk, unsigned, as you left them. Elara didn't look at the documents. She studied Cassian instead. The marble perfection of his face, the weight in his ancient eyes. The foundation preserves the estates, she said. It doesn't sell them. Descendants can reclaim them anytime. Cassian went very still. You've been investigating. You said the curse demanded surrender. But that's not true, is it? Elara stepped closer. The properties stay in trust. The money funds medical research, blood disorders, rare diseases. The solicitor talks too much. Cassian's jaw tightened. He talks enough. Elara's voice stayed steady. My brother didn't die from a curse. He died from something real, something medical, something your foundation is trying to cure. Cassian moved to his desk. His hands rested on the dark wood. 847 years, he said quietly. Do you know what that does to a person, watching everyone age and die while you remain? Is that why you started the foundation? Elara asked. To find a cure for yourself? For the Thorne men. Cassian looked at her directly. The pattern started with my sister. She married a Thorne in 1847. Her son died at 23. Bloodless? No explanation. Then her grandson. Then her great-grandson. 7 generations of the same death. Elara's chest tightened. Your sister's descendants. My family. Cassian's voice roughened. The only family I had left. I couldn't save them by dying. I can't die. So I tried to save them by learning why they died. The inheritance money, Elara said, understanding blooming. You gave it to the women so they could care for their families, so they'd have something after their sons or brothers or husbands died. And I used the estates as collateral for the foundation's work. Cassian's hands curled into fists. Every property, every investment, funds research into the blood disorder killing Thorne men. We're close now, another 5 years, maybe less. But Thomas is already dead. Elara's voice broke slightly. You can't save him. No, Cassian met her eyes. I can't save any of them. I can only watch them die and try to prevent the next death, the next generation. Elara thought of her daughter's phone call, the medical debt, the desperation in her voice. She thought of her mother's journals, the love that had bloomed and withered while Cassian remained unchanged. You loved my mother, she said. I loved all of them. Cassian's admission came quietly. Not romantically, always, but I loved them. They were my family, distant as the connection became. And I failed every single one. You're still trying to save them. Trying isn't saving. Cassian turned away. You should sign the papers. Take the inheritance. Your daughter needs it. The foundation needs the estate. And you'll walk away like the others, knowing I'm a monster who couldn't protect his own blood. Elara picked up the unsigned documents. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she set them down again. I'm not signing, she said. Cassian's shoulders stiffened. Your daughter needs her mother more than money. Elara moved around the desk until she stood beside him. And you need something else. I need nothing. His voice turned cold. I've needed nothing for centuries. You need someone who stays. Elara touched his arm. His skin felt cool through the fabric. Not forever. You know I can't give you that. But for however many years I have left. Cassian stared at her. You're mortal. Yes, Elara didn't flinch. I'll age, I'll lose, just like my mother did, just like all of them did. Then why? Because finite time is still time. Elara's steel gray eyes held his pale gold ones. And maybe that's what you've forgotten. That decades matter. That years matter. That being with someone for a little while is better than being alone forever. Cassian's expression cracked. Something ancient and wounded showed through. I'll outlive you, he whispered. I know. Elara squeezed his arm gently. But until then, you won't be alone. And maybe that's enough. The study fell silent. Outside, the sun disappeared completely. The new moon would rise tomorrow, but the deadline no longer mattered. Cassian's hand covered hers. His fingers were cold, but they held on tightly. What if I can't bear it, he asked, watching you grow old? Then we'll bear it together. Elara smiled sadly. That's what finite time means. We don't waste it on fear. Cassian pulled her closer. His forehead touched hers. For the first time in 800 years, he felt something shift in his chest. Not hope, not yet, but possibility. Stay, he breathed. I will, Elara promised, for as long as I can. Dawn light touched the terrace stones like a promise. Elara stood at the balustrade, watching the sun climb over the estate grounds. Behind her, she heard Cassian's careful footsteps stop at the threshold. He never crossed into direct sunlight, not because it would burn him, he'd explained that myth was false, but because 700 years of night made daylight feel like an invasion. You didn't sign, he said. No, Elara turned to face him. He stood in shadow, his pale gold eyes catching the reflected dawn. I won't take the inheritance. Something flickered across his marble features. Relief, perhaps, or disappointment. The foundation will continue its work, she said, the research into blood disorders. But I want to be part of it, not as a recipient, as a partner. Cassian stepped closer to the light's edge. Elara, you don't understand what you're offering. The pattern has held for 7 generations. Every Thorne woman who refused the inheritance walked away. They had to. The grief was too much. My mother didn't walk away. Elara pulled the journal from her coat pocket. She loved you, and you loved her. I warned her not to sign. His voice carried centuries of regret. I told her what would happen to Thomas. But you couldn't tell her to leave, could you? Elara opened the journal to a marked page. Her mother's handwriting filled the margins. She wrote that you asked her to stay, even knowing she would age, even knowing she would die while you remained. Cassian's jaw tightened. That was my mistake. No, Elara closed the journal. That was your humanity. The word hung between them like an accusation and an absolution. I'm not human, Cassian said quietly. You were once. Elara moved toward him, stepping from sunlight into shadow. And some part of you still is. Otherwise, you wouldn't have spent 800 years trying to save your sister's descendants. He looked away. I've failed for 7 generations. Then let me help you succeed in the eighth. Cassian met her eyes. In the pale gold depths, she saw the weight of centuries. Every woman he'd loved and lost, every man who died despite his efforts. The endless accumulation of grief that should have broken him, but somehow hadn't. If you stay, he said, you will age. I will not. I know. You will sicken. I will not. I know. You will die. His voice cracked on the word, and I will remain. Again. Elara reached out and took his hand. His skin was cool, not cold, solid, not marble, real. I'm not offering you forever, she said. I'm offering you now, however many years I have, however many days. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Because Thomas died thinking he was cursed. Because 6 generations of Thorne men died the same way. And their mothers believed in supernatural punishment instead of medical truth. Elara's grip tightened. Because you've been fighting this alone for 8 centuries, and maybe, just maybe, 2 minds are better than one. Cassian looked down at their joined hands. The research could take decades. Then we'd better start today. You might never see results. The cure might come after you're gone. Then you'll have to finish it for me. Shh. Elara pulled him gently toward the light. That's how partnership works. We take turns carrying the burden. He resisted at the threshold, not from fear, but from habit. 800 years of staying in shadow. One step, Elara said, just one. Cassian closed his eyes, took a breath he didn't need, and stepped into the dawn. Sunlight touched his face, warm and golden. He opened his eyes and looked at Elara with something she hadn't seen before. Not hope. Hope was too fragile for someone who'd lived so long. But possibility. The chance that this time might be different. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Neither do I. Elara smiled. We'll figure it out together. Behind them, Myron appeared in the doorway carrying a breakfast tray. She paused, seeing them standing in sunlight, hands clasped. Then she set the tray on a small table and retreated without a word. The gesture was ordinary, domestic, human. Cassian stared at the tray as if it were a puzzle. I don't eat. I do. Elara released his hand and moved to the table. You can keep me company. She poured tea and sat. After a moment, Cassian took the chair opposite. The morning light painted them both in gold. They didn't speak of curses or immortality. They talked about the Foundation's research, about genetic markers and inherited conditions, about the possibility of finding answers in blood instead of legend. It was practical, scientific, entirely mortal. And for the first time in 800 years, Cassian Valdren felt something close to peace. Elara Thorne finally understood what her mother had known, that some choices weren't about forever, they were about now, about choosing connection despite its inevitable end. At last, she saw the pattern clearly, not a curse, but a legacy of love trying to outlast death. But then she noticed something on the breakfast tray, a small envelope, sealed with dark wax, her name written in unfamiliar script. Cassian's expression changed as he saw it, his peace fracturing into something that looked like fear. Who delivered this? Elara asked. Cassian's voice was hollow. The witness,